Today on Business Success in Six with Stacie, I have Dr. Scott Glidden here from Select Pain Care in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Dr. Scott, thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for having me, Stacie.
It is my pleasure. You know the drill. I would love to talk to you about Select Pain Care and share what you're doing in business with our clients, community, and followers. Is that okay if we talk about it?
That sounds great.
All right, here we go. When people ask you what Select Pain Care does, how do you describe your business?
Well, to put it as I think as succinctly as I've figured it out is we specialize in non-surgical repair of chronic nerve, muscle, and joint injuries. So we're there for those that maybe you've been to the chiro, you've been to the PT, you've been relying on weekly massages, and you don't want to get pills, injections, or surgery. We'd like to think we're kind of the link between that conservative care and that more aggressive care.
Yeah, and we had a nice conversation before I pressed record. And so if somebody has a back pain yesterday and they call you today and say, Dr. Scott, help me with it, how are you going to respond to them? What are you gonna do?
I'm going to give them the tools that most people need to know about, which is most commonly if you do something, there's an event, rest will likely take care of that. So I wouldn't say you should reach out before maybe 10 days if it's not a serious injury, right? So if you're just like, this is kind of achy, this is kind of annoying, a lot of times you'll have what's called a disc spasm, where you wake up and your head's here, you can't really straighten up out of the chair. Good posture, lots of walks. You do 5, 7 days of that, it'll resolve entirely on its own without you spending a cent. But if you have had something for a little bit, I will refer you to other docs in the area because we do specialize in those that haven't found help with other providers.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting that you're supporting your patients by first telling them to rest, just to do the basic things, and then referring them to somebody. And from there, if they're referred to somebody who's great, but the problem still isn't going away, then what happens?
Then each of our patients kind of go through a brief phone screen, right? Like, what have you tried? How long have you had it? Some very basic questions our staff will do. And if it sounds like you'd be a good fit, you'd come in for a consultation. Consultation could take up to an hour. You basically come with your paperwork all filled out, and I comb through it, ask follow-up questions. And when I felt like I've gotten a good handle on what's going on, I'll ask, what do you know about our approach? And then I will explain why we do what we do, and then I'll explain kind of what I believe you have going on based on your history.
Mhm.
And then if they want to go forward through an exam, which would confirm or deny my suspicions, it'd be another hour. You'd wear some gym clothes or whatever, and I would basically measure function. So your function, your physical function, is basically your range of motion plus your strength. Now, I could just have a whole bunch of gym equipment to measure strength, but that's a lot of equipment. That's a lot of space. So what
Mhm.
I can do is there's a bunch of research out there that says, hey, Stacie, 95% of the population has this much range of motion. So I could say, hey, if you have this much range of motion, but you should have this much, and I find all these things I can fix, you're in great hands. So everything is very objective, very clear to the patient what is going on, where the progress is, because ultimately you could like me, you could think an office dog is cute, you could think the location is convenient, but unless I'm actually providing results, I want you to fire me.
Interesting. Yeah, and what I love about your business as well is that your patients have to invest into their well-being and health as well. It's not just you sitting with them for 10 minutes doing something. They have to invest time, they have to invest money and the will to want to get better and listen to what they need to do, right?
Absolutely.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
So
we
what were your
always
plans?
ask they should choose one thing to improve upon themselves while we're doing our thing.
That's huge. I think that's great because it's not too many things that they're going to be overwhelmed with, but it's one thing that they can really focus on. So that's brilliant.
Mhm.
So, what were your plans when you started your business and how have they changed?
Initially, I wanted to be in sports. I grew up in Indiana. I had an associateship as a licensed chiropractor. I was like, oh, sports chiropractic is what I'm going to do. So I went this route through school where I thought I'd have all the tools to be like a team chiropractor or something that's going to be dealing with active patients. But what I've learned is that active patients, they want to do their activity, even though like maybe there's times we need to have patience and not do the activity, or they've done the activity to the point where they've worn the joint down. And if they continue that, they're going to need surgery. So sometimes you're their friend because you get them out back to doing their activity. And sometimes you're that voice of reason they don't really want to hear.
Yeah.
So the population we've shifted to is people in chronic pain because nobody's listening to them. They've tried a million things that haven't worked, and people a lot of times will just be labeled as crazy or it's all in their head. And oftentimes that's not the case. Adhesion is their problem, which is like a glue-like substance that occurs when you overuse or under recover from activity. And that activity could just be crappy posture. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but it builds up over time. And there's a lot of conservative care that just doesn't address
Interesting. So interesting. So my next question for you, and this is pretty obvious, what is the biggest way you impact the community? I mean, we could just say it, you're taking pain out of people, but there's so much more in that. Do you want to unpack that a little bit for us?
that. Yeah, I mean, we care. Like we care a lot about patients. You know, if you need a hug, you're getting a hug. If we're here to say, look, I'm trying to give you the most specific diagnosis possible. And it's going to include some stuff that you might not think of. I might say, hey, we need to work on breath work because your stress is too high. She's like, well, what do I do when I'm going on you know, if I get stressed out, I go on a run. You don't always have that option. What are you going to do in the moment? Hey, what's your sleep like? What's your hydration like? What's your diet like? You know, there's things that I can help with. I can refer you and we can have a team effort, but ultimately you have to have some ownership. So we're here really caring about what's going on. We want you, if it's the results aren't going to be with us, we're going to send you to what your best option is. So, you know, it's not I have a hammer and you are a nail. It is really, it is catered to each and every different case. So if somebody is, you know, really tired and they've tried seemingly everything, we're here for that person. Even if you've already had surgery, we're here for you.
I love that. That is so important. Just that simple I care, but not you're really dealing with the whole person, all of their actions, their mind, their body, the external environment, all of it, and putting that together. That's so important. And we had this conversation before too, a little bit about it's the same thing with business and business coaching. We as business coaches, we can't do the work for you, but we can diagnose and help you, support you along the way. I think it's just absolutely fabulous what you're doing. Thank you for that. So my next question for you is, what is one challenge that you have faced that other business owners could learn from?
Don't try to be everything to everybody. You know, this is why we are selective. Where you know you start off in business and you're like, well, I'm going to take anybody that comes through the door. I'm gonna sell them whatever I've got, and that's going to be it. But ultimately, you could be doing that person a service, and that's not how you're going to build goodwill amongst your community. So, you know, the more you get out and do things, when you actually serve others, and you're not just looking for your own sale, that comes back around. So, doing those free events, they kind of suck up front, but like as you get more practice with them, you know, really get your messaging down, you'll find that like just people be like, hey, you know, go to Dr. Scott. He's just a really nice guy. Like he's going to figure out what's going on. If it's not him, it'll be something else. So, you know, try to serve others. It's going to come back around. But also when you serve, be sure you're serving the right population. Don't just say I'm going to do everything for everybody because, you know, you'll be maybe the jack, but not the master of none, right? So really try to niche down and get this tribe of people that are really going to love what you do because you are doing it for that particular population.
That is so cool. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. It's even in your name, Select Pain Care. So it's not for everybody. It's select. It's for the ones. So I love that. Thank you. What does the future look like to you in Select Pain Care? And do you have an exit plan?
I started off with a portable table in the gym, and now we've got about 2,600 square feet downtown, and it's much nicer than the gym where it's stinky and it's 58 degrees because they don't want to pay the heat. So we've got growth in mind. We're bringing on another doctor at the end of the year. He's actually closing his office so we can work together. So each of the consults and exams will have two doctors in there, kind of talking about your case. So really trying to drive that value up with our patients. But ultimately, I'd like there to be at least 4 doctors on the team. We have the capacity to have at least one on top of the one that will be coming on later this year in this space, and then we could grow from there. But Once you have 3 or 4 other docs, the way contracts are set up, I could have the option to be in or out of the practice at that point.
Mhm.
I deliberately didn't want to call it anything with my name because if there was a time in the future I'd want to sell, or it would be much easier. You wouldn't have to worry about rebranding or any of that stuff. So ultimately, this is really getting us, my wife and I, our hopefully future family, some flexibility. We've got great hours, and maybe this won't be the primary thing. Maybe we'll dabble in real estate or we'll invest in other businesses. But I love my job, so I could see for at least the next 10 years doing this, and then after that, I believe there's systems are in place where I would have some flexibility to do other things if I really felt like it.
Absolutely. I love all that you're sharing. Even when you talk about systems, we talk about this quite a bit with our clients. You have to have systems in place, and it's very, very smart that you didn't put your name into the business name if you would consider selling it in the future, because that does affect the brand and the value if it's right, not your if it's not their name. So thank you.
Mhm.
So my final question for you today, Dr. Scott, all subjects open, what inspires you most?
Just being around people that constantly want to be better versions of themselves. My wife is she does some personal coaching, nutrition coaching. She was a nurse, great nurse, but she's like, it, you can only affect so many people, and some of the people that she's working with don't want to be helped. So we're both on this very like personal growth path. She's meeting with a new uh, life coach for herself today. I have one myself as well as my business coach. um, and then I try to surround myself with friends that like they're driven to be better, and I think there's nothing more in life than surrounding yourself with those that you can have fun with them, but ultimately they're driving you to be a better person.
Love that. Absolutely. Yes, we're always working on not all of us, but you and I and your wife and people we surround ourselves with, we're working on being the best versions of ourselves. And that's an evolving thing. It doesn't just stop all of a sudden we're the best version, right? It's so involving. It's so inspiring that you say that. And I love that you're sharing that you have a life coach and a business coach, because those are all the people that are going to get us to grow to be the next best version of ourselves. So thank you so much for your time today. If somebody wants to connect with you, to talk to you about Select Pain Care, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Easiest thing would be go to our website, selectpaincare.com, or you could go on Instagram or TikTok, Facebook, select pain care would be our handle. So we have videos, probably 4 or 5 a week, and there's hundreds of them. So there's no shortage of material to see what we're about.
Yeah, learn that knowledge is power, and I assume that they're going to keep coming. So thank you so much. We'll
Yes, they
definitely
are.
awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Scott. Keep growing personally, professionally, and helping people with their pain. Thank you so much for your time today.
Will do, Stacie. Thank you.
Take care.